Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to our session, Reinventing Post-Merger Integration Using Artificial Intelligence, New Approaches for Faster, Smarter, and People-Centered Integration. My name is Tim Morton. I'm one of the co-founders of Prompt.ai. And as we get started, please let us know in the chat where you're joining us from today. And history shows us that technology consistently drives change, from the Industrial Revolution through to the impact of information technology in our own lifetimes. And yet, despite the project, research from Harvard Business Review and other research tells us that around 70% of change initiatives fail. And between 70 and 90% of acquisitions fail to deliver their intended value. Too often, this comes down to unrealistic expectations, lack of visibility into change, integration, and how it's landing with people and culture. Today, we're joined by business leaders from across the globe to explore how modern AI capabilities can support post-merger integration in a more adaptive, data-driven, and people-centered way. We're not here to suggest one right method, rather to share some practical options on how AI can be used to improve visibility, reduce risk, and support better integration outcomes. With stock markets reaching all-time highs and M&A activity continuing to accelerate, successful post-merger integration has never been more critical to create value. So thank you for joining us today. Please share your questions in the chat and the Q&A as we go. This session is being recorded, and we'll share both the recording and the slides following today's session. And today, I'm so happy to be joined by Leon Labovich from the Labovich Consultancy in London, England, and I'm joining from the Prompt.ai offices in Toronto, Canada. And we're here to share our experience about using AI to support successful change and integration. I'm also joined by Manan from Prompt.ai as well, who will be helping us with the Q&A and chat. Just a little bit about Leon. He's an experienced change and transformation leader. He's been helping leaders to reinvent their organization through mergers and acquisition. He brings a strong strategic and practical business skills to deliver lasting change. He's got wide sector experience from financial services to pharmaceuticals to engineering. Leon has a very personable style and has worked with clients throughout the globe, bringing original insight, depth of understanding, and competence to change situations. Leon, over to you for a few words, and thank you for being with us today.
It's a pleasure, Chairman, and hello and a warm introduction. I'm delighted to join you from England and the guests for this most timely webinar. In fact, much of our responses on the form will interesting bits in terms of culture, values, leadership, and people-centered change. It's vital to engage the audience. Failure to do this is common, and the reasons why many change projects fail. Also, as you mentioned, Tim, in your introduction, some leaders have unrealistic expectations. For example, I've had senior leaders expect behavior changes within a week and want you to know why change hasn't yet been delivered. Changing behavior are definitely possible with the proper methodologies, good coaching, and leveraging better data and insights, which we'll be talking about, but it can take several months to embed. Tim, would you explain this most interesting and successful method you've developed in using AI to drive culture change?
Thanks, Leon. And just before we move on, today's session looks at how post-merger integration is evolving, both from research and practice. We know integrations rarely fail because of strategy. They fail because resistance isn't visible early enough. So back in 2018, we were supporting a global integration, and a CEO asked a simple but powerful question: why aren't you using data to drive integration? And the question led us to pivot our approach and ultimately launch Prompt.ai. So we've been applying machine learning and predictive analytics, natural language processing, specifically to post-merger integration. with a focus on making integration faster, less risky, more informed, and more human. We're going to take you through a few slides today and then move into the Q&A. So Manon, if you could go to the next slide. And this slide really sets the foundation. And one thing I want to get across is AI isn't replacing integration leadership and change integration leaders. It's really augmenting it with better data, better insights, and better tools. And it gives the integration leader speed, scale, and clarity by making sentiment, risk, and misalignment visible much earlier and ongoing. And the real value is better decisions about people, culture, and engagement. Manon, if you could jump to the next slide, please. Just really quickly about natural language processing, or NLP. It's really an important part of AI-enabled change, and NLP simply allows us to listen at scale. So instead of relying on pulse surveys and interviews and anecdotal feedback, we can analyze thousands of open text responses. We can surface sentiment and themes and emerging risks and resistance. And most importantly, this isn't about surveillance. The insights are anonymized and aggregated to help integration leaders really understand why people are reacting and where we need to put our attention. On to the next slide, please. So successful integration requires a balance across all 6 of these enablers: vision, leadership, culture, capabilities, operations, and success criteria. And I'm sure for most of the audience, most of your integrations, they over-index on operations and systems, and they under-index or under-invest on culture and leadership alignment. And AI really helps leaders to see where these enablers are drifting off, see where they can take corrective action early, and pivot quickly as needed. And we can see where to target those resources where they need to be targeted. Next slide, please. I promise I just got a couple more, and then on to Leon, and then on to questions. So I just want to share a little bit about AI-enabled change sprints, and this is happening because we have the ability to listen at scale. And these AI-enabled change sprints are replacing long, static, linear plans with short cycles of insight to action. And what we're seeing is leaders get feedback that they can address what's required across different geographies and work streams. For example, by listening at scale, senior leaders are understanding key issues and setting priorities within hours. Later that week, people managers receive targeted guidance. And before the end of the week, employees are hearing what's changing, what to expect, and how to engage. This creates momentum on integrations and alignment that simply wasn't possible before, enabling faster integration while building trust and reducing resistance, fatigue, and resist. So let's jump to the last slide I've got, and then I'll hand it over to Leon. And one of the hardest shifts in integration we're seeing isn't organizational, it's leadership behavior. And it's getting leaders to understand there's new ways to tackle post-merger integration. And AI doesn't replace judgment. It just removes blind spots so leaders can lead with better information. When AI-enabled change is applied well, leaders, managers, and employees are more informed. They're engaged because decisions are based on real insight, not assumptions. And interventions become targeted. Risks are seen early. Alignment happens faster across team cultures and ways of working without losing that key talent and losing your momentum. So over time, we build repeatable integration capabilities and give leaders ongoing visibility to risk resistance, enabling faster decisions and ultimately a smoother day one experience. So as I hand it over to Leon, he's got a couple slides to share just before we head into the Q&A, but just one real quick thing on Leon. He brings over 30 years of seeing exactly where integrations break and how leadership can either fix or amplify. So over to you, Leon.
Oh, thanks, Tim. And congratulations to you and your team on developing successful AI to support change. We'll return to this in a moment, but wanted to clear the air by outlining fundamentals of getting off to a good start. In all cases, it's vital to have the understanding and backing from the chief executive and the top team. This is simply good leadership, and also will depend on the consultant establishing a good rapport and trust. So we're laying the groundwork. You don't want to have a situation where responsibility for success is delegated or transferred to middle management or the change manager alone, with the CEO only claiming credit when the outcome is successful. And I think we can all relate to that. We should bear in mind that some leaders are uncomfortable or even scared of change and have a low threshold for risks. I've met some managers whose minds go blank when faced with apparent uncertainty. So our presentation is about creating that certainty, as Tim was saying. It's important to have a clear change methodology, which is straightforward and not overly complex. To become operationally successful, a merger or transformation requires change management and assistance to know the pitfalls, someone that's done it before. What is engagement? It's a word that's bandied around and used a lot. Engagement happens when people do things differently. The upcoming slides will show the importance of change management focused on people engagement. This is not to diminish the importance of operational synergies, but it's that such synergies and returns won't happen unless you have successful engagement. So you can talk about the financial returns and so on, but unless you've got the groundwork embedded in there, that will not go through. Okay, so if I could have the next slide, please. Successful engagement is people-centered and starts with cultural integration and the use of AI as described by Tim. Culture is the bedrock of the organization, and understanding this will provide the basis for integration and vocabulary. This vocabulary is really important. Ignore culture at your peril. It's important to understand the big picture as well as the details, and integrates the big four: strategies, operations, information systems and technology, and people. I use the 8 pillars as a clear, straightforward method, and will show in the next slide using factual thinking and logic, as well as important creative aspects to motivate staff. And it's this methodology which is used, rational to creative, which is unique about engaging staff and developing change. I've attended too many creative change presentations the size of War and Peace to know that you will lose the audience with masses of uncoordinated facts. So the methodology that I'm talking about is straightforward and clear. The benefits are those that are listed on the slide and include reducing risks and resistance, realizing performance, and delivering new identity. So if I could go on to the next slide, please, of the actual 8. This is the 8 pillars of change. And you can see that the 8 pillars are graphically and pictorially represented there. Those with the red circles around them are the creative aspects of change, whereas the ones that aren't circles are more of the rational aspects of change. It's a clear method for taking merging companies through post-merger integration to create one new operationally successful company. The emphasis is on engagement of all stakeholders. The process requires the consultant to have a good understanding of the business, is absolutely vital, and strategic, practical, creative, people, and motivational skills. There's a range of skills that you need to help deliver change. And that's why sometimes change is not delivered well, because it tends to be too rational or even too creative. But the balance that's shown on the 8 pillars here is what will get the delivery. So moving through to the actual, Manon, if you could use the cursor to put on each slide and pillar as I go along. So the first one is agree a high-level plan. So you must treat your program as a change program. Too often, tactical and piecemeal approach is wrongly adopted. 2, a business model for the new world. The success of a change program will hinge on developing the right business model for the new world. This is vital and needs a lot of thought beforehand in terms of where the geographies are, where the headquarters are, and the interaction between them, the operating companies. 3, develop toolkits. These are learning kits for tackling all the new skills required to deliver effective and lasting change. 4, engagement is key. Remember, we talked about engagement happens when we do things differently. It won't happen unless people understand and wish to react in a new way. Everyone should feel part of the change, giving feedback, demonstrating new behaviors and ways of working and showing involvement. 5, people resist change. It's just human nature. The well-known change curve, which we'll be showing in the next slide, shows phases of denial, resistance, acceptance, and restructuring. Everybody goes through it, and we have to recognize that and deal with helping people in the change process. Opportunities for creative expression, one of my favorite ones. There are wonderful opportunities for creating expression. For example, with a merger, develop the leadership story and new values and brand through graphics, sound bites, and film. Lots of opportunities to get involved with staff around the business. Assess and develop culture. As I've mentioned, culture is the bedrock of the organization. Cultures are fascinating, different, and vital living expressions of how we do things around here. In the words of Charles Handy, the great management guru who's sadly no longer with us, he said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. We all know strategy is important, but with his experience, he actually said that culture is the most important thing. Finally, making change happen. In my experience, delivery is the hardest skill and mindset that's required. You should be proactive and not take anything for granted. Understand the pitfalls and take the organization through it. That's where the real value of the change manager comes in. So that goes through the 8 pillars of change. And now if we can move on to the next slide. Yeah, this is about responding to change, the change curve. Following the change methodology in the black dashed lines overcomes a drop in performance over time and gives structured oversight to achieve success. A well-planned change program gives direction and avoids confusion. So, Tim and our audience, that's the presentation in terms of my experience over many, many years. It's having the clear methodology that's not complex and that people can embrace themselves. So with that, Tim, could I go back to you? Thank you.
Tim, you're muted.
Oh, thanks so much, Leon. And Manon, if we could go on to the next slide, that would be great. So we're gonna shortly jump into the Q&A. We'll look for your questions in the chat or the Q&A. And I just want to call out, we've got a great comment in the chat from Christopher M. Payne saying, agree, you can use AI in this way to understand mood and sentiment. I think the greater complexity now is also what the future integrated business looks like reimagined, hybrid bot and human, and how you manage that change and create buy-in into the future state itself. Love it. Perfect. And there is lots of there certainly is lots of change. And I must say, just earlier this year, we were asked if we could understand the sentiment of manufacturing robots. So just thinking about that, and we've got a long way to go, and a lot of companies really don't understand the sentiment of their own people, let alone the machines that happen to be supporting manufacturing or other parts of the business, and it's just going to accelerate. So great comment, keep them coming and the questions coming. Manon, if you could jump to the first question. And Leon, before I throw this over to you to get your thoughts, we'd also like to get the thoughts of members of the audience as well, but just a little bit about culture. And Leon, you said a couple things. You said, with regard to culture, ignore culture at your peril. Culture is the bedrock. And when I think about culture, it's mindsets and attitudes and how things get done. And I'm sure for everyone on this call who's been part of an M&A integration or post-merger integration, you've heard it before and you've seen it before. Well, the cultures are similar, or the cultures are so much alike. They're not. They're just not. If you think about a company that has been in business for that long, they have their own ways of operating. They have the written rules, the unwritten rules, the things that happen behind the scenes. So with that, Leon, would love to hear from you and from the audience after. But why is culture and not systems the most important aspect of integration?
Well, put simply, culture indeed forms the bedrock of an organization. It's the platform and space in which a company works and is recognizable by all, and is sometimes described as the way we do things around here. So new systems can only be adopted in a unified culture. That's the reason why culture is actually the most important aspect, and not only systems, but operations as well. We're looking at IT operations, culture, and people. That's the reason why culture is the most important aspect in my view. The others are important, but it needs to be viewed in context. Don't know if anybody has any other response to that.
Oh, well, we'll just the chat is open, as are the Q&A. So let's just jump to the next question. And I so agree with you when it comes to it comes to culture. So if we can jump to the next, great. And then this one here, all about all about leaders and integration. And one of the things that I want to share from the work that we've been seeing is a lot of times leaders and teams have a perception of what's really happening and how people feel and what to do about that. And I will say that in a big M&A integration we just completed, one of the key things we heard from the CEO was, we spent so much time upfront planning and working on strategies and all of these integration plans, and they did it without listening to their people. And once they'd heard the voice of their people and what they needed and what they wanted, they realized that a lot of what they'd planned had to be shelved because it wasn't going to hit the mark. And what they did instead was they looked at what they weren't thinking about, and now what they understood, and they rejigged their plans to really work for the organization, for the culture and the people. So with that, Leon, I'd love to hear from you. How can integration leaders detect resistance, risk, and alignment early and ongoing?
Thanks, Tim. Yes. So resistance is detected when staff are demotivated and fail to adopt new ways of working. And it's resolved in my 8-pillar slide by the subject of successful engagement. So let me give you an example in my role in Singapore and the Far East. with an offshore engineering company. They were moving from shallow water diving, where they would fix the oil well to bring the oil to the surface, to deep sea engineering, where the oil maybe needs to come up a full kilometer. So in that particular case, staff needed to understand their new role and status, and getting familiar with the project of dealing with deep water, which is cold and extremely high pressures, and conveying this to the clients. And so they became more familiar with it, and it was very successful. Change requires a shift, an important aspect. You think about management, but change requires a shift from management to leadership. Now, I recently visited Sandhurst Military Academy in the UK. For those from Canada and other places around the world, Sandhurst is where we change and train our officers. And talking to the officers that were training there, they said that at least half of their training is actually to do with leadership. And that actually gives you an important aspect, that not only leadership, but emotional intelligence is vital and can be lacking in some companies. So getting familiarity with the new ways of working, the new operations, as an example in Singapore and the Far East in deep sea engineering, was an example of getting people broken into the new operation and overcoming resistance.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too, because we talked about leaders being a barrier, and we need to help them get on with new ways of working. But one of the things we often hear leaders say is, why can't their people just get on with it? I've moved on. I've accepted this, and one of the key things that we see, of course, is that leaders have been living this integration for quite a long time. They've been living and breathing it potentially for a good part of a year, and it's quite new for people managers and for employees. And it's so important that we support them and allow them to to go through what they need to go through, ask the questions, get the support that they need, and make sure that we're revisiting as we go. So, I think that's really important. So before we head to the next question, we've got a comment in the chat from Trish Gregory. Thanks, Trish. Love the conversation. In my experience, a critical success factor is ensuring managers and leaders are at least one day ahead of their teams, and that engaging them in private gives them the opportunity to internalize first in order to assist their teams. It's a tough assignment, but a necessary one, I think. Leon, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it can be taking people aside. It's all part of the skill of the change manager. Remember, I was saying that it's a multifaceted skill, and it's absolutely vital to have somebody that's done it before and can avoid the pitfalls. If it requires an internal discussion with somebody, so be it. I think that's an excellent idea to overcome resistance. So I'm totally in agreement with Trish on that.
Yeah. And Trish, it is such a great point too, that we've got to remember that leaders and people managers are going through this just like their employees. And I think giving everybody that opportunity, even if it's just a day, ideally it's more than that, but even just a day, for them to digest, them to understand, them to speak with their loved ones about what they've heard, digest it, and then get prepared to talk to their employees, because part of what they're going to have to do is, of course, come back and support their employees as they hear the news. So I think it's certainly a great one. So, and we've got another comment in the chat And our team wants to leverage AI more for project and change management. In your opinion, how can we leverage AI to proactively detect resistance, risk, and misalignment during the change journey? Have you seen successful examples of organizations using AI, whether through co-pilot, specific systems, other tools to identify these challenges early? Leon?
Well, I mean, we work together on AI, and you have pioneered this actually around the world, pioneered AI in change management, which is why it's so wonderful to work together. I mean, it's more your area of expertise. Yeah. Perhaps I could put it in your lap for the time being.
Yeah, and great question. I'm not sure who it came from, but I do appreciate it. And I think one of the things for us that's so key is we've got new tools and we've got new abilities to do things from a post-merger integration we couldn't do previously. We couldn't listen at scale previously and understand the sentiment and the fears and the risks of people, and then turn it around instantly to leaders on what are we going to do about this? Here's what the data is telling us. What do we do as a leadership team? How are we going to address it? And then from there, being able to go to people managers and back to employees and saying, we've heard you. This is what we're doing. Here are the differences in different geographies for different roles, for different segments. And here's how we're going to approach change. It's not linear anymore. It really is agile, and it's adjusting and pivoting on the fly. And as I mentioned earlier, it's about not spending, months and months doing planning and strategy. Of course, we need some of that up front, but it's really important that we listen to key constituents and really understand what's required to move them through that integration. So it's a real great opportunity. And we had one executive who said, I want to read the comment from every one of my people, and I want to understand what they're saying. And it was, this is the way I've always worked. My people expect me to read everything, to understand everything. Well, there's new tools, there's new ways of working, there's new things that remove bias so we can actually understand what people want, what they need, what's important, and help the leader to actually spend time supporting their people where it really does matter. So certainly a great question. So and we've got another comment from Tony Evans. Thank you, Tony. People tend to accept change if they can see the benefit for them personally and feel that they can have a vested interest in achieving a new state of being. Having a feeling of control, or at least an improved state of control, brings people along. Leon, what do you think?
Yeah, Tony, you've hit the nail on the head there, and that is part of overcoming resistance. For those that would like to receive it, can have a more detailed explanation of each of the 8 pillars of change. But I totally agree. Part of engagement and overcoming resistance is at the outset understanding what are the benefits for me, what does it do, why am I able to express this through film or through discussion with people. So really, it's totally relevant what you say, Tony, to actually overcome resistance by discussing those aspects beforehand. It gives you more control, as you were saying. Yes.
Yeah, and Tony, it's really important for people to be heard, and then for us to act upon that, and also to create those safe spaces for people so that they can share anonymously and feel like they're not going to, they're not going to be reprimanded if they actually share what's really on their mind from a truthful perspective, and giving people that, that freedom. So why don't we, lots more in the chat, but why don't we jump to one more
Yeah.
question, and then we'll
Yeah,
get back to the chat.
it's talking about engagement. It's wonderful to see how people are engaged.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Manon, if we could go to the next slide, please. Okay. And I love this one. Why is it important to create identity and motivation during post-merger integration? And I know I know, Leon, on your end, you've really talked about that, creating identity and motivation. So love to hear from you.
Yeah, no, it's one of my the successful change programs that I've helped run have not only had the rational aspect, but the creative aspect, and that includes creating identity and motivation. Because when you move from one aspect, a big merger is going to actually change the identity of an organization. I remember once sitting on a ski lift, and a few years ago, with a Russian friend, and asked him what was the change that you experienced when the communism was disbanded. And he said it wasn't the aspects of the financial working of the economy, it was the identity. What was our identity? And so he was the one that raised it, and it was actually a joy to listen to it from somebody totally not involved in change, but he expressed to me why identity was so important. So you can do this in by many ways. You can create visual identity through storyboarding, writing the story, and design. So it's a kind of level of sub-branding. But what it does is it creates motivation. People, we all know who we are. We're proud of our countries. We're proud of our ways of life. And that's what you need to create in the change management for a new organization.
Yeah, thanks, Leon. And I loved your, I absolutely loved your story about the ski lift. And
That's not what I do in my spare time, but only occasionally.
Love it. I'm going to go back to the chat. We've got someone else who's pointed out that one constraint in detecting resistance is the short runway that is imposed before closing. We know that for sure. And they go on and say, only a selection of leadership and team members may be aware that the change is going to happen. This forces more change in a shorter time immediately after closing.
Yeah.
How can AI be used to sense and respond to resistance?
Yeah. Rob, if I can comment on that, it's absolutely vital, and why you have a simple but straightforward change methodology. I call it the 8 pillars of change, where you, from the outset, you involve the complete audience. And so you're not left with just, as you said, the short runway. If change is managed properly, and this could be one of the reasons why change in many cases is not effective, is to involve everybody in the change process. So I totally agree with you, and it's about following the right methodology and starting with the AI to gather the right data.
Yeah, and one of the things, that we've been able to do because we've been able to leverage AI is, in the past it would have taken so much effort in order to really understand across the board what was happening, how people were feeling, to analyze the data, to understand what was happening in different locations for different roles at different levels. But now with AI, we're able to understand the voice of the employee, the pulse. We're able to come back to leaders right away and say, this is what we're seeing. Here's what you need to address today. Here's how you get in front of your people. Here's where the biggest risks are. Here's what your people managers need to do. And here's how we target our resources. And one of the things we're seeing because of this is, we know there's limited resources from an integration perspective, but when we can really target where those resources are being allocated, and when they're being allocated where the need is most and they're addressing what people really need and want, that's so important. And one of the biggest things we see from resistance is when people haven't understood what people need and want and what they want to hear, and there's a plan that's in place and being shared, and it doesn't hit the mark because that's not what people want. It's really important that we understand and we address quickly. And with AI, it gives us that ability to do that without wasting days or months. We can act right away. And it's really important to come back to people and say, you were heard, and here's what we're doing. And it may not be every answer that they wanted to know, and we may not be able to tell them everything all at once, but at least we can tell them, here's the process, here's when you'll know. So great point. Thank you. Thank you so much. Pauline, Pauline Melnick, we've got a comment here. It sounds like this is an opportunity to really hear the voices of those who are engaging their voice and design with them in mind. Leon, what's your thought?
Well, I would take that in conjunction with Tony's other comment. What's it actually like being listened to? I mean, this is a point in the sense that with AI, you're actually finding out what people are thinking and listening to them at the outset, and realizing that not everybody understands that everybody has different opinions and different ways of looking at things. I mean, the fact that some individuals feel that they're just not being listened to. This is the essence of the messages that we're giving today, and the fact that you can have several ways of actually engaging and listening with people. You have the left brain and the right brain. The left brain is logical, analytical, linear, verbal, factual, sequential. That's the logical aspect. But the left brain is creative, intuitive, artistic, non-verbal, emotional, and imaginative. So if the change manager, the person that's helping you, or the company that's taking you through change is aware of the left brain and the right brain way of thinking, that's how you will engage the audience. And it's absolutely important to have that methodology at the start to engage the whole of the organization in change. So it puts that right on the map. And I can just I can align with your thinking. At the moment in the county where I live, you can't believe it, but we've just had water shortages, not because there's a shortage of water, but the management haven't thought ahead and said, well, what happens when we have frost? Oh, the pipes burst. But they haven't done it, and they haven't engaged with the public. Their mindset is in a completely different sphere. So we can bring the right mindset to delivering change. I don't know if you would agree with that, Tim. It's not nice having no water.
No, it's a bit of an essential. I think if we go back to Maslow's hierarchy, that's a real key. So why don't we hop to the next slide and next question, Manon? Thank you. And this one, Leon, how do we accelerate stakeholder engagement, adoption, and readiness across multiple geographies and work streams? And one of the things we know is that there's different levels of complexity in these deals and these integrations, and sometimes so much going on. So just with that in mind, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just mentioned clear communication of the organization across, as you were saying, the new geographies, the headquarters, and the work streams. So in our 8 pillars, agree a high-level plan explaining the new business model is really, really important, and it needs thinking through the way the organization is going to exist throughout the world, the operating companies and how they interact. Because when change takes place, there may very well be changes in the operating structure of the organization. And I can only reiterate the understanding the left brain and the right brain activities to ensure that you're keyed in to the way that communication is actually carried out. So having the forethought of what your high-level plan is going to look like, it underpins this whole question.
Indeed, indeed, and you know, one of the things that comes to mind too here is we as change people, we do the best we can with our tools and our templates and our ways of working. But one of the things leveraging AI enabled change that's really helped us is we can actually understand what's happening within different geographies and what's happening within different functional teams and areas and roles and for people managers. And it's a real huge benefit, because one of the things we know, and one of the things we've experienced, I'm sure Leon, you're seeing that as well, is different teams have different cultures. The organization as a whole has culture. The other organization certainly has a different culture too, but in different regions and locations, we've got different cultures as well, and different perceptions about what this change means. And it really is paramount. So yes, no, I think that's it's really important for us that that one size doesn't fit all when we think about change and we think about integration. And also, because we had a playbook that worked fairly well for one organization coming together, we really shouldn't be replicating the same playbook as we go into the next one. It's really important for us to understand what is different and what is unique about this deal, and also understand the voice of those that are going to go through this transformation and through this integration, and their voices and their concerns. And I think that's essential too. So we've got a few more comments in the chat. Can you further elaborate with a real life example? Do you enter a prompt on the deal type and then AI produces output, detailed plan for that scenario? And then what LLM AI would you be using? Data put together from previous deals, etc. Trying to understand how you can 100% ensure the data is accurate and valid. Sometimes asking, because sometimes AI engines like ChatGPT will make a suggestion which really might not be true. And that's there's a lot to unpack there. One of the things that I will say is that for us, it was really important. It was really important with our models that we were just focused on change integration. And when our team started to build our model back in 2018, and they have been working through from a machine learning perspective, just from a change perspective, for the last 7 or 8 years. And what's really important too is we often get asked, well, why wouldn't we just use ChatGPT for this? Or why wouldn't we use Copilot? Or we've already got our internal GPT. And one of the big things is they are not created to manage change, transformation, and integration. You got to be really careful about, the garbage in and garbage out. And one of the things that's so important for us, and I can't go too far because I know we've got 10 minutes left. It's really important too that we see this deal as this is a specific deal. Here are the key artifacts that are going to be ingested. We need to understand the voice of the people. We need to understand what's happening within the organization. We also need to make sure that their data is protected and that it's clear that their data is not being shared for any other purpose. So I'm going to leave it there. I know I could probably spend an hour or more, and I would look to bring in my colleagues who are prompt to AI specialists. But I certainly want to keep things moving. So why don't we jump to the next slide, Manon, if we can. And I think this is time to one of the comments in the chat. So Leon, over to you. Can you share a real life example, a real life case for an M&A integration?
Yeah, sure. Of the many that I've done, I just finished a really interesting one with an aviation company, a large company that was taking over a smaller organization, which would clearly have similar but different operations and certainly different cultures. So a good way of entering into the company's discussion was to do a cultural survey in both organizations. And that gave the language that we were able to use to merge the two companies together. And then obviously we went out to the different bases and spoke to pilots and all the rest of it. But the thing about a cultural survey is that it gives the right language to actually diffuse anything like that might cause people to point at each other and saying, you're doing this and you're doing that. It actually gives training in a new language and a new methodology to constructively discuss their culture and how they differ. So this is an example, and it was a way of entering into a very long project which lasted nearly 2 years, all based on the cultural identity at the start with. And that's why I say that culture is so important. But then it moved on to objectives, KPIs, and benefits, and all the rest of the hard stuff. But it needed the culture to get in, and that's a perfect example of how an M&A integration project can start and how successful it can be if you get in at the roots of the organization. So that's a perfect example, hopefully.
Yeah, indeed. And I know, one of the key things is making sure that even as we're communicating through these deals, that making sure that we're respecting the language and the culture of each organization. And it's so important that if somebody in either one of the leadership teams is speaking, that they really do take into account the culture, the ways of working, the language before they actually speak. And something as simple as referring to employees or referring to all of the employees as colleagues when they're called employees can be a big no-no. It's really, really important that that we respect that. So why don't we head on to the next slide? And we've just got a few minutes left, but Leon, we'd love if there's any closing thoughts, any takeaways or key things you want to share with our audience before we wrap up.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. It's just enjoyed so much the response from the audience with their very, very probing and interesting questions. But to me, it shows that we've actually, in our presentation, hopefully addressed one of the overriding factors, that you need a change methodology and good data to make change happen and make it happen so it doesn't fail. And that's my leading point of being is to prioritize people and culture, and all the rest will follow using data capture and AI, as Tim mentioned, and a clear methodology such as the 8 pillars of change. I think people have been coming at it from you might say, comments that shows that there has not been a structure and a method for their change integration. What we're offering is that method that is going to cover the creative and rational aspects and the AI and ensure that change is delivered properly. And you can see why the Harvard Business Review comes up with a comment like 70% change. So the benefits of our experience help is to ensure performance and synergies are in fact delivered. it reduces the risk of pitfalls and overcomes staff resistance and all the questions that have been related to that. And it transfers learning and greater assurance of success for your project. So those are my closing thoughts. But I think I would want to listen to what people's responses afterwards. But hopefully we've addressed the need at the start to have that methodology and the data collection at the start.
Indeed, thank you, Leon. And for me, of course, always coming back to culture and the importance of culture and the importance of understanding those cultures and being able to to listen and then to act is so key for me. And the other closing thought for me for those joining is it's worth thinking about leveraging different tools to drive integration. We know that there's we know there's different tools on the market, but it's really important in these days if we're going to improve those numbers of those integrations that don't go as well, and we're being asked to do more with less, and we've got to find ways to dedicate resources to where they're needed. Just thinking about leveraging different tools and different ways of working, it's really important to do our homework and really think about what those might be. So if we could head to the next slide, please, Manon. So, before we wrap up, I just want to thank Leon. Leon, you've got so much passion and so much knowledge. And thank you for sharing your experience and your perspectives around people-centered change and the importance of clear, practical methodologies, and particularly the 8 pillars of change. And I'd also love to thank everyone who's joining us today for your thoughtful questions and your contributions. And I loved all of the comments in the chat. And today we've explored how AI can be used as a foundation for planning and delivering change and post-merger integration. And it gives leaders early, ongoing, trustworthy insights directly from their people that gets turned from insight to action quickly. And if we combine that with strong engagement, a clear change discipline, we're going to create better outcomes and reduced integration risk. And I think that's one of the keys. So one of the things I wanted to say too is, we're going to be sharing the recording and the slides following the session, and also a more detailed overview of Leon's 8 pillars of change. So please look for them. And if you could go to the next slide and last slide, Manon, thank you for your help on this. So if you want to reach out, there's Leon's contact information and also mine, and we'll include it in the email following the session. But I want to thank everybody for their participation. Thank you for joining us and making time today. Hope you found the session helpful. We've really enjoyed it, and all the best today and for the rest of the week. And may your integrations go smoother than ever. Thanks so much, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.